Good afternoon. My name is Patrick DeRay. I'm Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I want to welcome everyone who has come back this afternoon following our Bar Advisory Group meeting this morning to attend our regulatory workshop on repair assistance. That's smog check repair assistance. And we wanted to welcome both those who are physically in attendance as well as those listening in via the webcast. We have a presentation to make about some regulatory changes that we are considering and wanted some feedback on before we pursue them, and in an attempt to finalize them and our efforts to finalize them, really feel like getting your feedback on the front end before we go through the formal process, and which will give an opportunity for everyone to comment on them again, but trying to get as cleaned up a version as possible before we proceed with that formal regulatory process. That's why we usually do front-end workshops like we're doing today on any regulatory matters that we are considering rolling out to the industry or to help our jobs in regulating the industry. We have two presenters today, Denise Cunningham and Randy Powers with the Consumer Assistance Program. That program, the Consumer Assistance Program, operates our vehicle retirement programs as well as our repair assistance program. Today's focus is strictly on the repair assistance component. I know there was a few people that had commented to me that they were not going to be able to attend today. I know Walsh's, is that the name of the station? I know them quite well. They're an active participant in repair assistance. They're probably listening in. I encourage them to do so. They were hoping to make it, but I don't see anyone in the room representing that station. They're from the Sacramento area as well, and just wanted to point that out, that there might be some participants, got shops to run, busy, may just be listening in and trying to keep the shop open today as well. So for those who were able to physically make it, we appreciate that. We don't want to discourage those who aren't able to attend in person from participating. There is a way you can send us a comment or a question relative to the workshop and the proposals that we're going to be laying out before you today. We want your feedback. That can happen today through the webcast. The way to do that is through the email, an email address, which is barmeeting@dca.ca.gov. Excuse me. Again, that's barmeeting, all one word, @dca.ca.gov. But that's not the end of it. If you have comments that you've thought of following the workshop today, or questions that you didn't think of while you were here or listening to the workshop that come up after we've adjourned, just feel free to reach out to us. We've got contact information at the end of the presentation that we'll share with everyone. And this presentation's up on our website as well, so this is not the last opportunity to weigh in. So just want to begin the process, and it'll continue for some months going forward, because the informal process of workshopping an idea begins today, but the formal process of actually getting everyone's feedback who's interested in and is affected by this potential change to our regulations will go on for many months. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you, both of you, to give the presentation. Are there any questions before I begin? Or before they begin, excuse me. I've already begun. All right, we'll proceed. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Randy.
Make sure, oh, yeah. That's wrong. Okay, so I'm Denise Cunningham, one of the program managers with the Consumer Assistance Program. This is Randy Powers, a program representative supervisor with the Repair Assistance Unit. And we're going to give you a brief summary of the proposal, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Before we start, those of you who are here and those of you who are watching online, there is a handout that is just a summary of the presentation, and or is a copy of the presentation, and then we also have the draft regulations, the draft of the proposed regulations here in the room for those who want it, or is posted online for those who would like to look at it. I'll try and refer when we get to each proposed change. I'll try and refer to the section number so you know where to look if you're following along through the draft. So the proposed regulations, just to summarize them, the purpose, we want to provide higher repair contributions based upon model year. We want to reduce the high pre-repair expenditures for low-income motorists. We feel that this is responsible for some of the low participation in the program at this point. We want to remove unnecessary eligibility restrictions pertaining to registration. And once again, this is designed to increase program participation because we feel right now that there is a large group of people that this program could serve. However, for a variety of reasons, the program is not reaching them at this time. So if we go on to the next slide, you'll see it's a graph of participation over the past 6 years. And before we look at this too closely, let me preface this by saying that these are statistics from, or this is a graph of participation from 2012 onward. Prior to 2012, at the time when we had directed vehicles and the program wasn't restricted to those who were to just those with low income, CAP repaired over 50,000 cars a year. Since it has been restricted to lower income participants, that participation or those amount of repairs has gone down quite a bit. So we're just going to look at the last 6 years. The last 6 years, it was all the only participants who were eligible were those who were low income. But I'd like you to look at the light blue line there shows the applications. And in the last 6 years, we've gone from 42,000 applications a year down to less than 19,000 applications a year. The dark blue line represents those that we're actually able to approve. And those have gone from a little less than 14,000 a year down to about 7,000 a year today. And the actual amount of vehicles repaired has gone from 9,000 in 2012 to about 3,300 this year. So clearly, there's been a decrease in participation, and we need to refocus our efforts at getting people involved with the program. There's a few reasons we think that this has happened. One is increasing repair costs, which we'll get to on the next slide. There's also the upfront copay that came into effect around 2012. It required that customers pay all of the testing fees and all of the diagnostic fees as copayment for the program. I will talk a little bit more about why that's discouraged people from participating. There's a couple other factors that have influenced participation. One is that the regulations indicating that there's regulations now indicating that the same vehicle and same owner can't participate in the program twice. That's reduced participation some. And then finally, there was a regulation that went into effect a few years ago limiting participation or limiting eligibility based on lapses in registration. The next slide looks at the cost of motor vehicle maintenance and repair versus the consumer price index, versus the overall consumer price index. And as you can see, a motor vehicle maintenance and repair has increased quite a bit more, quite a bit in comparison with the overall CPI. And in fact, in the last 18 years, the cost of vehicle maintenance and repair has gone up 60%. So that gives you some basic information regarding some of the underlying factors regarding the decrease in participation. Now we'll talk a little bit about what we want to do about it. This proposal modifies 4 sections of the California Code of Regulations. And for those following along with the actual regulation, I'll mention the number of each one as we go along. So the first proposal that the first section that we want to modify is 3394.3B, and the change increases the repair assistance contributions. We looked at increasing contributions for several reasons. As noted earlier, costs have gone up 60%, so a repair that costs $500 in the year 2000 now costs over $800. We also know that repair costs for 96 and newer OBD2 vehicles are often more expensive than they are for older model vehicles. And yet we feel that we can obtain significant emission reductions from these vehicles, in fact, more significant than for older vehicles. Thus, it may be worthwhile to provide higher repair assistance contributions for those vehicles. Lastly, statute does allow the department to increase contributions for repair assistance, provided it determines that the repairs are cost effective. And pre-approval is going to be BAR's means for ensuring cost-effective use of any additional monies that we contribute. And Randy?
Yep. So, with the current regulations, BAR can only contribute up to $500 toward the emission-related repairs through a STAR station. Under the proposed regulations, BAR may authorize up to an additional $300 toward a 1995 or older vehicle, and that would bring you to a maximum of contribution of $800 from BAR. And for 96 and newer vehicles, BAR may authorize up to an additional $700 for a total contribution of $1,200.
The next section we'd like to modify is section 3394.4A4, and the change we would like to make is to alter the consumer copayment and change it so that we don't have such high upfront costs. One of the reasons we want to do this is that consumers who are actually approved for repair assistance often don't participate. And I'm going to pull this graph back, or I'm going to pull the slides back to the first graph here. You'll notice the difference between the dark blue lines and the white lines. In the last few years, over half of those who received approvals to participate in the program elected not to participate. And we believe some of the reasons are going to be addressed by these regulations. So going back, one of the reasons that consumers are concerned about the high upfront diagnostic costs is surveys show that lower income consumers perceive these diagnostic costs as a risk with uncertain returns. They may pay for all of the diagnostic fees only to find that they can't afford the repair. Even with CAP participating and contributing funds, the repair just may be beyond their means. Another concern that these lower income motorists have is that the diagnosis may show that the vehicle is unrepairable, in which case they're out this extra money that they just paid for the diagnosis. So when people see these upfront diagnostic costs, they shy away from participating in the program. We believe that sharing the diagnostic costs with the consumer, we believe that if CAP shares the diagnostic costs, it'll reduce the risk and uncertainty for those for approved applicants, and we think we'll get higher participation. Statute does allow us to pay 80% of the total cost of repair, up to 80% of the total cost of repair. And we think that doing a direct 80-20 split of all diagnostic and repair costs with the consumer is the most practical method of complying with the statute. And Randy?
Yeah. So current regulations require that consumers participating in repair assistance must pay all the testing and diagnostic fees as their co-payment for participating in repair assistance. Under the proposed regulations, the consumers would pay 20% of the diagnostic and repair fees, and BAR would contribute up to 80% of the diagnostic and repair fees.
Okay, and before we move on, I want to make sure that everybody is clear on what this will mean. So on a 95 and older vehicle, for a $1,000 repair, provided everybody agreed that the repair was worthwhile, consumers would receive up to $800 in repair contributions, and they would pay a $200 copay for a total of $1,000. Now, for 95 and older vehicles under the proposed regulation, any costs over $1,000 would be borne solely by the consumer. For approved applicants with 1996 and newer vehicles, for a $1,500 repair, consumers would receive up to $1,200 and in repair contributions from CAP, and they would pay a $300 copay for a total of $1,500. And once again, for any costs over $1,500, they would bear responsibility for all costs over $1,500. So moving on to the third modification here, the third section is 3394.4A5B, and the change loosens the eligibility requirements pertaining to expired registrations.
Advance the slide.
Oh, thank you. So as noted, the change loosens the eligibility requirements pertaining to expired registrations. We currently deny applicants whose registrations have been expired for more than 120 days. And we believe that this is counterproductive. Some limit is necessary, some limit on registration expiration is necessary in order to prevent CAP from or avoid paying for the resurrection of vehicles that are in long-term storage. However, we believe that the current limit is unnecessarily restrictive. Many motorists continue to drive their vehicles unregistered for months before applying to CAP. And in fact, last fiscal year, over 2,500 applicants were denied for having registrations that were expired between 125 days and 365 days. We believe that denying repair assistance to these low-income applicants who are almost all still driving their vehicles just serves to increase pollution, and as noted, it's counterproductive. Randy?
So with our current regulations, the applicant's vehicle must be currently registered at the time of the application or not have an expiration of more than 120 days. Under the proposed regulations, an applicant's vehicle must be currently registered or not have a registration that has expired for more than 365 days.
Oops. What happened there? Come on now. Go back. There we are. Okay. It ran away on me here. So the last section modified by this proposal changes section 3394.4A5C, and this section currently limits eligibility based on lapses in registration. At this point, we've found that there's simply no reason for this restriction on eligibility. The statute does not require continuous registration for repair assistance. And last year, over 3,000 applicants were denied due to registration lapses prior to the current expiration date. And those were registration lapses over 120 days during the 2 years prior to expiration of their current or last registration. Many of these applicants were denied because of lapses that occurred under a previous owner. So they may have bought the vehicle a year ago and have been driving it all the time, and because of the fact that the prior owner let the registration lapse, they don't qualify for CAP. We believe this doesn't make a lot of sense, and once again, it only serves to increase pollution. So, Randy?
So with our current regulations, an applicant's vehicle must be continuously registered without any lapses exceeding 120 days during the 2 years prior to the current registration's expiration. Under the proposed regulations, this requirement would be deleted. Lapses would have absolutely no effect on the eligibility of the applicants participating in the program.
Okay, and that wraps up the presentation, and we're going to go ahead and open this up to questions, and that includes questions from anybody watching via webcast. So please send those in. And
Yes, any questions or comments? I know we have one that came through the webcast. Any others? We'll start with the audience here who's in the room today.
It's more of a comment. I would just like to say that I think the 80-20 thing would really be a good thing. That would probably try to get people back in the door without hitting them on the phone, having a hang up on us just with the right off the bat diagnostic charge. That literally mean these people call, and as soon as they hear the diagnostic charge, the phone hangs up. So if that is something that could be done, that would probably definitely boost it and have more people in it, and it would be more worthwhile for shops like mine to stay in the program. I like that idea a lot.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Rice? Do we have a chair? Are you just going to...
Bud Rice Quality Tune-Up Shops. There were instances where budget money became a problem, whereas you got close to the end of a budget cycle, we had cars that stayed on our lot because we couldn't get funding going. So I was just wondering if that had been worked on.
I don't think on the repair assistance side we have that issue anymore. In fact, that's why we're working on these changes to increase the participation and get closer to our budget allotment for the repair assistance program. That was a point in time, I believe, Bud, when repair assistance was available to not just income eligible consumers, but any vehicle owner who was directed to a station for inspection, similar to what we have in place. I mean, the directed vehicle program that we have in place right now for where consumers are directed to go to a STAR station for inspection. In the early days of this repair assistance, just that sheer direction and the requirement to go to a station, not necessarily of your choosing, made you eligible. That requirement or that eligibility option is no longer available. So we don't have as many participants as we once did. Yes, another comment, question. Please can you come in, talk? We've got those listening in on the webcast, and it's easier just to have you to come to the microphone, and there might be a button you need to hit there at the bottom of the mic.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you about inviting us down here. Hey, I see if you want to increase the effectiveness of the program, that 120 days is going to bump up your numbers significantly. That's the major one I see the thing. I never saw the problem with the co-payment or anything like that, because you could always, the cost and benefit to the customer was always there, I thought. The only thing is I'm wondering, it says the department increased repair assistance contribution provided determines the repair of cost effectiveness. Who is determining that cost of effectiveness of the repair?
Okay, what we envision there, first of all, at the present time, we do a back-end review for repair effectiveness. In other words, we look at the repairs that are done. Everybody has to send in a repair notification prior to doing repairs, unless we see something really unusual. The shop goes ahead with the repairs and bills us, sends in all the documentation regarding the repair, and we take a closer look at it at that time. And if we find that there's some issues or concerns with perhaps the diagnosis, it didn't seem appropriate for the type of failure, maybe the repair wasn't effective, maybe it didn't do what the shop hoped it wanted to do, then obviously we may have some discussions with the shop. And like I say, if we notice that up front, if there's something glaringly obvious, we'll talk to the shop about it. Now, what the statute required is the statute indicated that BAR has the authority to increase the contributions, provided it determines the repairs are cost effective. So we're at $500 now. We're going to for all repairs under $500, we're going to continue things the way they are now. For any repairs that for any repairs that are estimated above $500 or any group of repairs that combined cost over $500, then the repair facility would need to submit the repair notification to us, as they do now. But they would have to wait for one of our technicians to review it and ensure that and what we'll be reviewing for is to ensure that that the diagnosis makes sense, that manufacturers' recommended procedures for diagnosis and repair were followed. And as long as we can see it makes sense, we would go ahead and approve it. The other issue that we'll be looking at, I think, is, if the technician tells us, well, yeah, we can repair the vehicle, however, it really looks like, the engine's great, we can repair it, but the transmission's about to fall out, and we really don't think this thing's going to be on the road in a month, then we, in consultation with the repair shop technician, we might decide that it isn't appropriate to repair that vehicle.
Would you like us not to pre-qualify our customers, ourselves, or do you want to make that determination yourself? I could tell right then and there, the transmission's slipping, like I said, it's going to need repairs far beyond to keep it on the road, other than the smog inspection is concerned. So, do you want to make that determination, or you want the shop to help you out on that?
I think we would make any determination in consultation with the shop. The whole idea here is there's got to be a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
You're the folks in the field with your eyes on the vehicle. We'll talk back and forth. We'll help you as much as we can. Our role is to try and protect the taxpayers' money and and make sure that it's well spent. I think that's the role the legislature envisioned. So,
Which I think that's how I had come across myself, I would hope. That $650 minimum limit, how are you going to handle that now with this?
the
$650 minimum limit to, if they've done $650 worth of repairs to the vehicle, they can now say, I don't want any more repairs, and go to the referee and get exempt for the additional repairs for the next registration period.
So you're speaking about the cost waiver?
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, so this would all remain the same,
Okay.
right? So the cost waiver is not going to change with this.
All right. So if they decide, well, their 20% is getting too high, I just want to do these repairs, that gets me the $650, then that's good.
That's an option. They have their options, repair assistance, a
Okay.
cost waiver. There's also vehicle retirement. That's an
Yeah,
option.
exactly.
When it's not worth
Yeah.
repairing anymore.
And I think it's the appropriate time to bring up the fact, then, Randy, if I could get you just to sit back a little bit. I just wanted to make sure I made eye contact here. What we envision with this is a lot of this stuff, a lot of the specifics here can't be dealt with in regs. You know how long it takes to pass regulations. It's a long time. Some of these specifics, once we get the regulation through, or it's clear that it's moving along in the process, we'll be developing a standard agreement and a operations manual. And at that point, I think we're going to want to meet with representatives from industry like yourself and talk a little bit about, well, what should be the specific rules for how we operate? How are we going to deal with some of these cases like you brought up? So,
Well, thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Denise, Randy, we got a question on the webcast. I think you may have responded to this last gentleman's the answers to his questions. It does say, how would BAR determine which vehicles would qualify for additional authorization?
Okay, and the means of making that determination. We're going to make that determination on a case-by-case basis. We're going to be looking at the information that the repair station submits with their repair notification, and once again, as long as the repairs made sense and it appeared that the proper procedures for diagnosis were followed, then we would approve the repair. So that's how the decision will be made, is on a case-by-case basis, and it's going to be in consultation with the repair facility that sends in the repair notification. We don't currently and don't plan in the future to just dismiss requests for these requests to approve repair notifications. If we do have questions, we normally would contact the repair facility and discuss the issue.
So I guess you could have a number of scenarios which dictate the fact that it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. For example, and there's probably more than I'm going to provide, a catalytic converter is being proposed to slap on the vehicle, and there might be some upstream repairs that weren't considered.
Correct.
Throwing a cat on it, it's going to fix it for the time being, and then we're going to still have some problems. Cat burns out because of some problems upstream of that catalytic converter. So there might be some discussion or input from your program, your employees,
Yes.
the staff at the Consumer Assistance Program, and a discussion with the shop about that proposed repair. Similarly, well, maybe not in the same spirit, I guess, a catalytic converter being proposed on a vehicle that may be end of life, and the value and the cost effectiveness in slapping a cat on a vehicle. I'm not sure you're going to have some of those discussions as well, like, well, the state's not interested in throwing $1,000 towards repairs on a car that looks like it doesn't have much life left to it.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we wouldn't just base it on a value judgment, monetary value judgment on the car. I think the judgment would be based on whether we thought the vehicle was at the end of life. Regardless of its value, if it looked like it was going to be on the road for a few years, it might be worth fixing it. And as we discussed, if it looked like the rear end was about to fall out, or something else which would make it, which would be sending it to the junkyard, then it wouldn't make sense to put on a new CAD or do any other very expensive repair.
Any other comments from the webcast? No? Any additional comments, questions from the participants in the room? Mike?
Something we do at my shop, every car that comes in, regardless of what it's there for, we do like a courtesy check on it, safety courtesy inspection.
Do you have the mic on? Is
Yeah,
it
I
green?
think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Uh-huh.
Good. And I think this courtesy inspection is done via tablet, so we can basically send this information to the customer and let them see the stuff that's wrong with their car, what's good, what's bad, what's fair. This could also be a tool to help your team evaluate the repair as far as what would be, manageable to spend on this car that's either on its last legs or it can still drive down the road for several years to come. And yeah. And just to make another comment here, I mean, I just from the previous meeting, they said here, and this is just what I got off the charts before. I mean, you got 50,000 cars were retired. 50,000. You put a $1,000 tag to each one of those cars, that's $55 million, right? Am I wrong? I think we can do a lot more repairs and save the state more money And as a shop owner, we could benefit from that and make more money ourselves. But I really like again, the 80-20 thing, I think is really, that's kind of was one of my ideas. I really like that idea. I think that would really attract people to the program and make it beneficial for them and us, and as well as the state of California.
Thank you. You on 16th Street?
20th.
20th. I think I've been to your shop before. Yeah, with actually not me, my girlfriend's car. I think she did some work there. Yeah, I think some good points there. I mean, ultimately, our intent is to get more participants in the program. If ultimately they're driving a vehicle, and it can't bring it into compliance, I mean, what is gained by that? They're still driving the vehicle, it's unregistered, and it causes all of us, issues, including the issues for the owner of the vehicle. So our intent is to try and qualify as many of these vehicles that may be not currently eligible for the program. So that's why you see some of these changes. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the owner of the vehicle. It doesn't help air quality. It doesn't help those who are trying to make sure that the DMV and their registration requirements. And obviously, it doesn't help the shops. We're trying to fix these cars. So, yeah.
Right. And there is also there's a certain niche that of folks that this program targets. Those that have to drive to work every day. They need their car. And this is particularly a problem in Southern California, where the public transportation takes it can be difficult, having come from Southern California. So there's these folks that are trying to drive to work. They can't really afford to, that $1,500 isn't going to buy them a new car that's any better than what they've already got. And $500 to $700 to $1,000 may actually get their vehicle to pass, and they can get registered, and they can go on with their lives and drive their vehicle to work, get it registered. So that is a fairly large group of people that I think this program targets, and that's why we're increasing the repair assistance contributions and so forth, because right now the program probably isn't reaching a lot of those folks. And hopefully it's going to be good for the shops participating in the program as well.
I'm going to also, before I do that, I'm going to make another comment about a change we're considering that should help those who are active participants in the program. Bud, did you have a question, comment?
Yeah. Hey, Bud.
Bud Rice, just a quick comment, and I thought about it as Mike was speaking earlier. Have you guys ever considered? Well, let me back up. Yesterday, you made a comment of you don't know what you don't know in our session yesterday, and I think the same is true at the shop level. In many cases, guys just do what they do because that's what they do, and I'm wondering if you guys have ever considered coming up with a best practices for what good shops look like. So if shops want to participate in this program, here's how you do it, and this is what it looks like. And successful shops do these things. And then a guy could step back and go, I could do that. And then if those things were high performance indicators, you might be able to move shops up if they knew what best practices were for a shop that does it really well. So I just wanted to make that comment.
We'll take a look at that. Thanks, Bud.
Okay. And you were going to discuss...
Yeah, one of the things that I assume you're an active participant in the program. It's why you're here today, and you as well, and the commenter on the... Anybody else? And the commenter on the webcast and others who are listening in. And there's probably a lot of stations that are star stations that have a contract with us who've never repaired one car under the program, or maybe a handful at best in years of being under contract with us. We're going to be looking at really narrowing down our participants in this program. That's one of the things that wasn't discussed here, but you might see more volume as a result of not just these changes that were discussed at the workshop today, but another more subtle change to our program participants. What really is frustrating to us is to put a list of stations out there that are available for consumers to go and get their cars repaired, and they get responses like, I'll get to it in a few months, or they put the consumer off to the point because they're not interested in being a participant in the program, but they don't want to lose their star status, so to speak. So we're really going to look at, we looked at the statute and its requirements there, and I think we have some flexibility and leverage ability to really narrow down, to weed out those who are not interested in the program, because what it's done has been a disservice to the consumers who are shopping around to get their vehicles repaired. Ultimately, what that'll mean is those who really do want to be in the program will see potentially more vehicles.
Yes, yes, I think that from CAP's point of view, from those of us who work every day in the program, we would really prefer to, we want to work with stations that want to work with us, that find it in their interest to participate in the program. And, and it is true that for whatever reason, a lot of star stations who are currently mandated to have contracts with us aren't really interested in participating in CAP.
Anything else? So what's next? I don't think that was part of our presentation, but I think we ought to kind of lay that out. Our best guess of where we go from here. We've gotten a few comments. I don't know if that changes your language, the draft language at all, but what next?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a look at any of the comments. I want to study the comments that have come in here to see if there's anything that we need to change. I will also be interested, and let me put up my my address and telephone number here. I would also be interested in any written comments that anybody could send. We'll take a look at those. This draft version of the regulations is currently at DCA Legal just for a informal review. And I'm sure we're going to be getting it back. And once we get it back, if there's any new ideas that we can incorporate into the language of the proposal, we're certainly open to doing that. And so, once again, I would encourage anybody who's watching via webcast, anybody who's here in the auditorium, to please give us your ideas. This is definitely a cooperative process here. Thank you.
And ultimately, once we finalize what we feel is our final product, we will file those regulations, and once we get through all of the internal reviews and approvals, we'll file those regulations with the Office of Administrative Law. This is true of any regulatory package. That begins a 45-day formal comment period. We'll hold a public hearing, not required, but it's good practice. We've always done that. It'll probably be here up in Sacramento, probably at bar headquarters, just guessing, or here in this building. After which we'll finalize all the comments, repackage maybe respond to some of those comments. We'll always respond to the comments, but maybe make some changes as a result of those comments. If any changes are made, we'll send those out again, and then there begins an additional comment period of 15 days if any changes are made. And then eventually we come to the point where we've finalized everything after that public comment period, and we submit the final package to the Office of Administrative Law, and we hopefully get a thumbs up on that final package, and they are adopted. The regulations are adopted and then take effect. Takes a long time to go through all that. I said it in just a few minutes, but that'll take months. We'll do our best to expedite it. I think Denise and Randy have done an excellent job getting pen to paper and getting a draft of regulations, and they've already drafted an initial statement of reasons, which is the justification behind every regulatory change. You're much further along in the process, but we still have to go through our internal legal review and other budget review and legislative impact, making sure it's not inconsistent with our existing legislative statutes out on the books, that you aren't doing something that's, conflicts with something that the legislature's passed and the governor signed into law. So we'll have to look at all of those reviews and completing them, and then go through the formal public comment process, and then that's 45 days at a minimum, and then packaging it up with any comments that we receive during that formal public comment period can take a good 30, 60 days, and then going back to our department for review. It's a lengthy process. I just I don't want to lead anyone on to make it look like this is going to happen by spring break. This will probably be summer, fall timeframe of this year, later this year. We will push for something as quickly as possible, but I think you've done a lot of legwork to facilitate a pretty smooth review through our internal processes here. And the feedback we've gotten today hasn't been, these are maybe some fine-tuning related comments as opposed to this isn't going to work. And that's when we have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. I think we're real close, it looks like. Anyway, that's kind of the process, laying it out as quickly as I can, and with some expectations of how long it will take. But we'll be back. We'll make sure you've signed in at the front of the room here, so you can get the next version or iteration of this draft, and be on our mailing list so that you can participate in the formal public comment process. We did have one more comment through the webcast. Came in. I'm not exactly sure how to interpret this, other than I think it was in response to the comment I made relative to STAR stations and forcing STAR stations to be CAP stations. STAR test and repair stations, excuse me. It says, I think CAP stations should have another classification attached to them in addition to just being STAR test and repair stations. Okay.
Okay.
I only assume that meant you could be CAP station without having to go through STAR. That's how I'm interpreting it, because it came in right in after I had made my comment there. And I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I would, what I'm getting is that they're indicating that perhaps they would be a subclass of STAR stations or a special class of STAR stations that is approved for CAP and perhaps is identified as a CAP station.
Actually, I misstated. Yeah, I said that they could be a CAP station without being STAR. You have to be STAR to be CAP, but not every STAR station has to be CAP.
Hopefully,
work the other direction.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah.
It was hard to interpret. Okay. Other comments or questions?
The sooner the better.
Yeah, we'll do our best. Yeah, we're pretty far along, but there's still some more work to be done.
Yeah, and Randy and I are certainly committed to put
You
in
guys
some
have
work
done
on it.
a lot
So,
of work on this, and I appreciate it. It's helped our regulations coordinators immensely, having all the work that you put into it. Thank you. All right, we will adjourn the workshop. As I said, if you have comments, questions beyond today, feel free to reach out to Denise personally through her contact information, her phone number, fax, and email's probably even the best way to reach her. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you.